I'd like to talk now about what the concept of culture is. You may be wondering, what exactly is culture? Culture is the values, beliefs, attitudes, and practices accepted by members of a group or community. It is learned, not inherited. The term acculturation is the process by which culturally specific language and socialization practices are passed from generation to generation. It is a collective adaptation to a specific set of environmental conditions. Ethnicity is the term for a cultural and social identity that includes shared behaviors, food habits, dress, language, family structure, and often includes a religious affiliation with a common history or location. Frequently, there are intra-ethnic variations, though due to racial, regional, or economic divisions. Acculturation is a dynamic process by which an ethnic group moves into a new majority society and begins adopting the new society's values and habits. An individual becomes bicultural when the new culture is seen as a complement to the original culture of origin. Assimilation is the process by which people from one cultural group shed their ethnic identity and fully merge into the majority culture. As a side note, the movie The Namesake provides an excellent example of these concepts. It's also just a great story that I think you would enjoy. I have posted the trailer under this chapter's module, and Netflix does carry it, although it is not instant play. The term ethnocentric refers to a person using his or her own values to evaluate the behavior of others regarding his or her own culture as superior to others, while ethno-relativism is assuming that all cultural values have equal validity. Prejudice, on the other hand, is hostility directed toward a person of a different cultural group. The practices surrounding food are often the last ones changed through acculturation. However, there is often a lack of available native ingredients, and immigrants, especially the children, may find American fast food and convenience foods quite palatable. In addition, native ingredients are often prohibitively expensive. Generally, the unpopular traditional foods are the first to go, while the foods most associated with ethnic identity are the most resistant to acculturation. For example, those from East Asia are usually still consuming rice as a core food several generations after immigrating to America. When we look at how different cultural groups categorize foods, we can better understand the process of assigning values to food. In America, we use the 5 food groups, as in the My Plate icon from the Choose My Plate website that you used last week, to demonstrate the value of science and nutritional content. Numerous other models are also used around the world to identify and understand the role of food within a culture. Many cultures categorize foods by their meaning in that particular culture, such as cultural superfoods, prestige foods, body image foods, sympathetic magic foods, and physiologic group foods. This is probably confusing to you right now, but you will gain a better understanding of this in future chapters. To better understand the role of food in a particular culture, we first need to look at the frequency of food consumption. This is addressed in the core and complementary foods model, which we will discuss in more detail. We also need to look at the ways in which foods are traditionally prepared and seasoned, which is referred to as flavor principles. Daily, weekly, and yearly use of food, as well as meal patterns and meal cycles, should also be taken into account. There are also changes in food functions within a culture when there is structural growth, causing a developmental change in perspective. We have seen this in our own American culture in recent years, as foods containing trans fats are now quickly disappearing due to consumer health concerns. The core and complementary foods model places the core foods, or foods that are staples in the diet, in the center of 3 concentric circles, as seen here. These foods are usually consumed daily and are typically complex carbohydrates. Examples include corn, rice, wheat, yams, cassava, and plantains. They are typically eaten with complementary foods, such as spices, to improve their palatability and encourage their consumption. Secondary foods, on the other hand, although widely eaten, are less frequently consumed. They include foods such as meat, beans, milk, lettuce, or apples. Peripheral foods are eaten infrequently due to individual preference. Examples would be pickles or dessert foods. Generally, changes occur in the peripheral foods, not in the core foods. I'd also like to point out that when legumes, such as beans, are used as secondary foods, they provide a complete source of protein. You may recall in our Basic Nutrition Concepts module that grains and legumes eaten separately are not a complete source of protein. An overall diet containing both items, however, will have a complete number of amino acids. Flavor principles are the signature flavors that are associated with food preparation within a culture. Central to a cultural cuisine are the combinations of foods and the significance of flavor. Flavor is imparted by geography, latitude and longitude, and climate. It is what transforms feeding into eating, and it varies with location and processing. Salt is the most widely used. Your textbook lists many very specific flavor principles associated with individual cultures. A few examples include the Chinese use of soy sauce, rice wine, and ginger root, the Italian use of tomato, olive oil, garlic, and oregano, and the buttercream and wine associated with French cuisine. We also look at the meal patterns and meal cycles within a culture to analyze daily, weekly, and yearly use of food. Cultures differ on what defines a meal, what distinguishes a meal from a snack. Cultures also dictate how foods are correctly sequenced within a meal. Other cultural practices determine who serves the meal, what eating utensils are used, and how much is appropriate to eat at one time. These practices reveal clues about complex social relations and the significance of certain events in a society. By the way, all cultures dine on at least one meal per day. We also need to look at the cycle in which meals occur. When does one feast? Are there special foods or ingredients? When does one fast? Is it a partial or total fast? For example, during the holy month of Ramadan, Muslims are prohibited from food or drink from dawn till sunset. The developmental perspective of food culture suggests how social dynamics are paralleled by global trends in food, eating, and nutrition. With globalization, which is the trend from local to worldwide organizations, comes the food consumerization, where the trend is away from indigenous foods to mass-produced foods. Modernization and technological advances lead to food commodization, or a change from homemade to manufactured foods. As populations become more urban, the previous connections are broken between what food is produced locally and what is eaten in that region, leading to delocalization. As populations migrate, food habits are constantly changing as part of acculturation. Table 1.1 on page 11 in your text addresses this. Many areas are now attempting to bring the trend back toward locally produced foods, which is evident in the increasing number of farmers markets and food co-ops now being formed. If you happen to be a Pennsylvania resident, I have included a link to Pennsylvania's Buy Fresh, Buy Local website. Here you can put in your zip code to search for suppliers in your area.